BoJack Horseman is an American adult animated tragicomedy that aired on Netflix from 2014 to 2020. It follows BoJack, a former 90s sitcom star, as he struggles with fame, addiction, and self-destructive behavior while working on his autobiography with his ghostwriter Diane Nguyen. The series tackles themes of depression, trauma, and addiction, blending satirical humor with surreal storytelling. Key characters include Princess Carolyn, his agent, Todd Chavez, his roommate, and Mr. Peanut Butter, his optimistic former rival. BoJack Horseman has received critical acclaim for its writing, emotional depth, and character development, and is widely regarded as one of the best animated series to air. The View from Halfway Down, Episode 15, Season 6, was written by Alison Teffel. To recap the episode, The View from Halfway Down takes place in a surreal dreamscape, where BoJack Horseman attends a dinner party at his mother's house, with deceased characters from his past, including Sarah Lynn, Herb Kazaz, his mother Beatrice, Crackerjack, and Secretariat, who also represents BoJack's father. During the dinner party, numerous clues and subtle hints allude to the nature of this episode. Throughout the dinner, each guest reflects on their life and death, culminating in Secretariat's chilling poem, which expresses deep regret over his death. As the night progresses, BoJack realizes he is drowning in his pool in real life, and the dream is his mind processing his impending death. The episode ends ambiguously, leaving it uncertain whether BoJack survives or not. Spoiler alert, he does survive if you stick around to the end. At the start of the episode, BoJack is seen with a younger Sarah Lynn as they wait outside of Beatrice's house. BoJack is carrying a plant which he explains is a hydrangea. A hydrangea symbolizes various thoughts and emotions, such as heartfelt emotion or bad luck. It was first cultivated in Japan before spreading worldwide over centuries. In Japanese tradition, hydrangeas were often associated with sincere emotion and apologies, which fits given BoJack's guilt towards his mother Beatrice, whom he left in a retirement home. On the other hand, in Europe, it symbolized arrogance or boastfulness, which is also fitting considering BoJack's ego. The hydrangea is closer to the Japanese interpretation due to its pink color. And BoJack and Sarah Lynn enter the house with BoJack offering the hydrangea to Beatrice. However, she seems disappointed by this gift, which can be interpreted as BoJack recognizing that Beatrice wouldn't want an apology for him, or care much about it really. There is black tar that can be seen dripping from the ceiling. This black tar is a callback to an earlier episode where Charlotte, an old friend of BoJack's, comments that Hollywood is sitting on top of a tar pit and how it sucks you in before you even know of its existence. He enters a different room where he finds the other guests attending this party. The other guests are attempting to capture a bird that's flown in through the window. This bird is depicted in more of a human-like form, rather than its natural state. The guests at the party are scrambling to catch the bird, while Zach Braff, who appears as Beatrice's butler, tells her that there is a call in the next room. A bird flying into a home is often interpreted as an omen of impending death, but is also associated with transitional changes in life, such as rebirth. Following this meaning, it highlights the significant transitional changes that follow in BoJack's life after this episode. Beatrice leaves soon after the exchange of who Zach Braff is, and she's talking on the phone to who we assume is BoJack's father before BoJack gets distracted by Herb. BoJack approaches Herb and they have a similar chemistry from before. BoJack betrayed him, much unlike the time when they were alive earlier in the show. During this section of the episode, BoJack converses with various guests at the party, including Crackerjack, making small comments about their relationship or their death, which is an ongoing theme throughout the episode. BoJack eventually chases the bird out of the kitchen window, and we move on to Beatrice, who comments that BoJack's father will be late. We've now moved into the dining room, where BoJack is sitting at the head of the table. Sarah Lynn has evolved from her younger self to her older self, as she discusses the best and worst parts of her life. Each guest talks briefly about their best and worst parts of their lives, while BoJack notices the tar from earlier is now dripping from the ceiling above him. The tar is continuously following him throughout this episode, and none of the guests acknowledge its presence. Every guest at the table has a different meal, which represents the last meal they ate before they passed away. Sarah Lynn is eating fast food, which, during her relapse, she would have likely eaten. Herb is seen with peanuts, which is referencing the peanut truck that he hit. Corduroy is seen with a lemon, Crackerjack with rationed goods from the war, and Beatrice with a dinner plate, likely from the nursing home. BoJack has a plate of pills, and his water tastes of chlorine, alluding to the grave nature of his situation. The conversation continues as the topic turns to meaningful death, the act of dying for a greater cause. Beatrice calls Crackerjack's death the ultimate sacrifice, which opens a discussion about the impact their lives have had on those around them. Sarah Lynn rants about the sacrifices she made during her life, to which Beatrice responds with how her death was a hedonistic bender. The comment Beatrice made enraged Sarah Lynn, who argued that she was talking about her life, not her death. With each comment made, the tar continues to drip on BoJack. After they discuss the best and worst parts of their lives, Herb begins to talk about the freedom to fully express himself after being fired. Corduroy asks him if he can ask a question, which leads to Herb and BoJack making jokes about the point of asking that. After, Corduroy asks Herb if he received any pleasure from the charity work he did, leading to the characters discussing whether it is selfless if you get pleasure from doing it. Zach Braff returns and lets Beatrice know that BoJack's father has arrived. Secretariat, who represents BoJack's dad, enters with a garland around his neck and in his running clothes. BoJack calls him dad despite looking like Secretariat. When Secretariat arrives, the conversation turns morbid as Herb recounts how he wanted to kill himself after he got fired from the show Horsing Around, but didn't. After this, Secretariat complains about Herb's lack of follow-through, which links closely with Secretariat's death, which was by suicide. While Secretariat discusses the best and worst parts of his life, he mentions his death as his best part. BoJack spits a considerable amount of tar onto the table, and all the guests begin laughing. BoJack remembers going swimming but is unable to recall the exact time, and Secretariat pulls the attention away before asking BoJack if he has an example of the best part of his life to talk about. Beatrice then interrupts as BoJack is explaining his best part, starting the comedy career with Herb, and we move on to the next part of the episode, which is the final show. BoJack enters a new room with chairs and a stage up front, and Herb is seen hosting the event in BoJack's honor. BoJack is understandably confused as Herb calls on Sarah Lynn to perform. BoJack tries to apologize to her before being cut off, with Sarah Lynn saying that this is her time. She sings the song Don't Stop Dancing. While singing the lyrics and playing the piano, she ascends before sliding back down. This represents her career, as she rises in popularity before slowly descending into addiction and risky behavior. Her provocative dancing symbolizes the pressure and expectations her audience and family have put on her to remain sexy and hot, despite her desires to have a normal, everyday life. Another example can be seen in her song Prickly Muffin, which initially stemmed from a nickname for her role as a child character in Horsing Around, before evolving into a sexual innuendo for her singing debut. After her song, she's the first person to fall into the abyss beyond the doorframe. Don't Stop Dancing was sung twice in this series by Gina and Sarah Lynn. The origins of this can be traced back further, with Beatrice introducing this mindset to BoJack when he was younger. The meaning of Don't Stop Dancing is that you need to continue to perform even when you feel like you can't, as it's the secret for living forever, as said by Beatrice. Later in life, BoJack gives this lesson to Sarah Lynn, which traumatized her. Sarah Lynn internalized this lesson, and despite her ambitions to become an architect, she was forced to pursue a career in entertainment. Sarah Lynn further sings about how, due to her tragic passing at a young age, she'll remain through her legacy of her work. If BoJack had passed away young, he feels he wouldn't be remembered for all the hurt he caused, but for his life's work in horsing around. Herb then introduces Corduroy, who will perform an aerial routine, a joke about how he died. BoJack is now very perplexed and asks Herb where Sarah Lynn went before being dismissed. BoJack has lots of questions, and Herb asks him to sit down and wait his turn, which is a subtle nod to BoJack's fate. During this discourse, Corduroy can be seen hanging before finally abruptly swinging into the door and into the abyss. While Herb is introducing Zach, Secretariat asks BoJack if he wants to smoke outside. They both end up on a bridge, a nod to Secretariat's death. They both have a cigarette when BoJack asks Secretariat what the door on the stage leads to. This question remains unanswered, though, as Secretariat angrily discusses Herb, specifically his concern that Herb hasn't found peace and doesn't believe anyone can. Secretariat finally begins to have a talk with BoJack, as his dad, saying that he did care about him and his mother, despite putting up walls. BoJack then replies saying that he wished his dad would have said this when he was alive, and before BoJack wakes up. Secretariat scoffs at this before showing BoJack something terrifying. He flicks a cigarette over the bridge, showing BoJack himself drowning in the pool in his back garden. We're now back on the show with Zach Braff delivering a monologue about loss and those we leave behind. BoJack bursts into the room, telling everyone to stop the show in a panicked state, after realizing that he is dying. Zach and Secretariat ask BoJack to calm down and to allow everyone else to complete their part of the show. BoJack pushes Zach, causing him to slowly roll back into the door on stage. After this, BoJack has a full-blown meltdown, shouting about how he shouldn't be here. BoJack begins to think about what led him to this place, recounting how he broke into his home, which isn't his home anymore, and watched horsing around before getting into the pool. He shouts that he got out of the pool and even called Diane. Herb calmly tells BoJack that they're trying to do a show here. BoJack's reaction is quite reminiscent of the panic your body goes into when the brain realizes that it's dying. BoJack says he needs a phone to finish the conversation and begins frantically running to the door, which disappears. BoJack starts to hyperventilate as the panic starts to set in. Secretariat reads a chilling poem called The View from Halfway Down, the episode title. He is standing in the spotlight as he reads this poem, with each verse being more expressive and panicked than the last. The door from earlier also gets a spotlight and moves closer as he reads more of the poem. As he reads through the poem, his regret and fear are palpable. Secretariat falls through the door at the end of the poem backwards, his papers flying everywhere. This poem is a beautiful masterpiece that skillfully captures the complexities of suicide. Each verse becomes increasingly difficult to listen to as you feel his panic and struggles. While reading the poem, he expresses his regret and his desires to change his mind. The perspective shifts as he reads, with the beginning of the poem having a third-person perspective, which devolves into a first person. It can be inferred that Secretaria is disassociating due to the constant shifts in his perspective. The end of the poem is written in a first-person perspective, as the consequences of his choices become his own, and fear and doubt are replaced by acceptance and regret. BoJack runs out of the room, clearly disturbed. He runs through the door before reappearing back on stage. The remaining guests tell him that he's not going to get out of the pool, and as Herb distorts, he shouts at BoJack to sit down. BoJack asks Herb if anyone's come back from this place. Herb explains that there is no place, that this is BoJack's mind creating this to go through what it needs to go through. Herb finally introduces Beatrice and Crackerjack, her brother. Beatrice is wearing her debutante dress, and Crackerjack is wearing his army uniform. Beatrice is doing an interpretive ribbon dance, while Crackerjack is playing the trumpet. She gracefully dances and jumps into the air, landing next to BoJack before whispering to him that this is the hard part. Beatrice jumps high, twirling the ribbon around her, and she says to herself that now is the easy part, which is wrapping herself in the ribbon as if it was her cocoon. Crackerjack holds onto the end of the ribbon and ties it around his waist before jumping through the door and into the abyss. Black tar pours out of the door and tightly wraps around Beatrice, absorbing her. The only part left behind is a ribbon, which is now black instead of white. The new ribbon slowly slides through the door before disappearing altogether. The view from halfway down is a gut-wrenching episode. It's supposed to make you uncomfortable, and it's one of my favorites. It discusses various perspectives on life and death, focusing on the different meanings that lie in between, such as self-sacrifice. The thought that this episode takes place in BoJack's dying mind gives the audience a sense of dread. It was beautifully crafted, with each moment having significant meaning and a variety of different interpretations. This is an episode that can be watched repeatedly, yet each time it feels just as new and as interesting as your very first watch. Thank you for watching until the end. This video took a while, I'm still new to this, and really do appreciate your support. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, it tells me that you like this type of content. Have a good day, bye bye for now.